Yes, everybody, welcome to the fifth episode of Dilated Peoples of the Caribbean. Hope you've been enjoying it thus far. Obviously, the first four episodes were focused upon the first peoples of the Caribbean, which are the indigenous. Obviously, the next set of people to arrive within the Caribbean were the Europeans, who we're going to focus on right now. And we're going to just look at it a little bit more from their point of view, where they were at in evolution. And I hope you enjoy the reading. Anyway, let's get straight into this. The meteoric rise of European global dominance in recent history begs the question, in the multicultural climate of today that narrates untold history as a priority, echoed from liberalist perspectives, often of the same breed, who are in search for answers as to how Europeans, out of a dark and damp piece of the rugged Eurasian landmass, came to be the world's lineal superpower. In this passage, the approach of economics overlooking humanity is going to be taken into consideration. The Europeans, regarding sequential review at some point in the last millennium or so, have been forerunners when discussing matters of conquest lust. Taboo, too sensitive to be spoken of in public forum, a hypothesis is to be attempted. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm probably just going to give a sort of just a slight hypothesis of why Europeans are leading from the front, you could say geopolitically, over the last 500 years. Obviously across 5,000 years, 10,000 years, or even a billion years, it's not even a lead, yeah? But in this current period, this micro period of 500 years, they've obviously been at the forefront of certain invention. And, it's allowed them to sort of control the world from a geopolitical standing, especially via the exports of colonization and so on and so forth, social constructs such as that. So, just going to give a slight reasoning for it. But anyway, let's read on. Human beings being noticeably drawn to warmer waters from a naturist perspective are to be drawn closer to Helios. Could it be that for mankind to develop the ability of survival going against its bodily nature, that for growth to occur, adaptiveness and invention might be of a crucial significance in relation to survival? Could it be supplemented by the machine of concentrated effort that evolution was sped up by a group pushed to the brink due to being within occupancy of biologically the most meteorologically inhospitable landmass? Could they be the product of ancestors that, coerced by nature into forming migration patterns that as a consequential byproduct were afforded no option but to repel nature? Could being situated at the frontier of survival create the innate ability to keep spreading and adapting no matter the condition that's present? Could it be concluded, if measured by the ruler of eternity, as a defining minimal edge over the rest of Earth's inhabitants? A slight edge is enough for a group to always lead from the front, in muted ignorance of this existence. In retrospective simplicity, it may lend to the fact, unless there is a cave to huddle within, that one must break a sweat to decrease chances of being left exposed to the harsh elements when in fruitier, warmer climates the same urgency doesn't require appeal. Right, so what we're sort of alluding to there is, when you think about it, Europeans, they live, or they're from a part of the world that is inhospitable in terms of environment. Not that it's not anywhere else, but a lot of the darker skinned people are from warmer, sunnier climates, fruitful climates, yeah, you could say. And what does that breed generation after generation, millennium after millennium, yeah? You notice in Europe the focus is on homes. Yeah, you got to have a roof over your head. Homes, yeah? Like it's all about that, because you'll be exposed to the elements. So you'll see like tower blocks upon tower blocks. Not that you won't see them in other parts of the world, but it's very, the focus here, you have to have a roof over your head. When in tropical climates or warmer climates, you could say they don't have, it doesn't have the same appeal. If you're exposed to the elements, you still will, from a naturist perspective, survive, right? But in Europe, unless you're going to hide in a cave somewhere, you will not survive unless you're warm, or you won't live a quality life unless you're warm, unless you're you know, you sweat, you have to sweat to live. You have to go out and get to actually survive in that environment. Yeah. So can you imagine like what that might muster within a person after generation. Not to say they'll be more harder working or anything like that, possibly so. But if they don't get up and do things in the day or in the morning, they will freeze to death, literally, going back thousands of years. So it's probably made them over thousands of years be predisposed to adventure, predisposed to maybe going beyond in terms of frontiers, seeing what else is out there. Just because where they are is not a nice place, you know. So they've had to sort of expand and try and find out what's out there in the world, you know. So I'm just giving just like a few thoughts and feelings on why they may be sort of seen as maybe leading the pack at the moment, but not really across like thousands of years. But obviously invention, university institutions, stuff like that, allowing people to expose their talents and stuff like that, could just be from the simple fact that within Europe, like they're ingrained in a way that, like, because they know they have nothing, they have to go out and get something, you know. Anyway, let's move on. So, in recent years, coinciding with the information epoch alongside diverse integration, the distance between European global society dominance and that of the past has certainly felt erosion. This arouses the question that could be the reason for societal dominance, much opinionated by the darker-skinned majority, to be something as simple in structure as a culture that focuses a deeper survivalist importance framework on literacy, organisation, and has assembled an evolution model that manifests the realisation of tangible achievement that has driven the European way of life in some ways to still be the benchmark that's often levered with an unheralded voice in recent history that has become the standard language base across the world, managing to secure English as history's premier language of trade has lent well to seeing that European culture is hypnotically spoken into more human beings across the globe than ever. Language is an equitable means test on societal success over the course of history. Subconsciously, propaganda dating back to the pharaohs has always been apparent, paving the way for linguistics to be used to shape any one group or society gradually. Many revolutions over, and a society's reason for success could be burrowed deep within the communication spectrum. Right, so language is definitely an equitable means test to know whether a society's successful or not, you know. I would say as a base, and English is probably the most widespread spoken language, most successful language, so that speaks volumes for what the colonial empire did, no matter what, right? That being said, can you imagine, right, every song, every hit, like black reggae song or whatever, what language is it spoken in? English. So like hypnotically, like you're speaking like European, it's all one family, don't get me wrong, but you're speaking like a European's words, European language. Yeah. So your African voice is coming through European language at the end of the day. And they do say like you can speak another language. I wouldn't know because I only speak English, right? And you mean completely different things. So it's something to be mindful of. Like hypnotically, they are still like leaders. They still have a heavy control because you have to channel yourself through like their language. How many hits all the songs, everything here has come in English, right? As the premier language. So at the end of the day, like that's also to be respected. The fact that they've got like a high level of power regarding linguistics, you know, and that's been fought over like hundreds of years of colonial empire and going around the world, and obviously like having cultural exchange, you know. I always say to myself, people say like Britain is the most like, oh, they're racist and whatever and all this sort of stuff, but I think to myself, right, when you think about it, Britain, the country, has had more cultural exchange, left their impression on so many different countries around the world, that they have a better cultural understanding of everybody else's culture as opposed to somebody from the middle of Asia somewhere being able to link up with somebody from the middle of Africa somewhere or the middle of South America somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Where like their cultures are more likely to clash when the British, like, so they can have, you can say they will have racism, yeah, but they should also have the most understanding people towards culture. It stands to reason because they've gone around the world and had cultural exchange, mutual exchange. You know, war, whether you like it or not, is a cultural exchange. You know, it's a conversation between two groups. You know, not good, but it is. You know, so it's just to be recognised. Again, once again, like they, you know what I mean, the exploits of empire and just sort of highlighting what I think, you know. So like, yeah, no, you can say like, oh, these people like, you know, racism, hundreds of years and all the rest of it, but it also stands to reason they'd have some of the most non-racist and best human beings you could ever have in this world that are white, because they've travelled and they've like communicated. And in a funny way, everybody's culture gets a chance under their culture or within their culture and is allowed to, as the next few 100 years or 50 years will see, take over their culture. So, you know, anyway, let's move on. Cultural exchange, proceeds of warfare and outright survival, most would agree, would be ingredients in the potion of continued evolution. The unrelenting desire for invention has arguably become the singular rule that can fester one society to dominate over another. Another mechanism of why Europeans over the last 5 centuries have accelerated growth could be the harnessing of psychologically man-made tools of exertion that motivate one to achieve as a group, that can also reward the individual en route to lighting the bulb of practical synergy. The European strong economic model may suffer honest self-appraisal allegations of heartless resolve. However, benefactors of this model have generationally undoubtedly been recipients of a system that seems to provide for subjects on a more equitable scale of potential. Vast rivers of opportunity varied over violent succession. Their model of exposing the radical has had the platform erection achievement filters with rigidity that reaches way more than rival audiences, mismanagement of harvesting expectation from their respective demographic chart, allowing for unrestricted institution, which incubates divisional intelligence, could have been the reason of revolutionary difference. An institutionalized system that somehow nurtures those to live long enough to prove experimentation has been the main thing that has layered the foundational breeding ground for enrollment of the genius clan within their population. Hard to envision, the rest of the world may have been in the industrial phase of stifling what could flourish through no evil but for facilitating a society that would be forced to retrospectively copy instead of retrospectively construct, reinvent, or as it would be put in contemporary times, have an emphasis placed upon technology's first step towards advancement, upgrade. The word upgrade, taken as commodity, could be the one reason that creates an edge that sees one society dominate over another. This circumnavigates the thought that white Europeans, privately casted as the least spiritual in comparison to their Asian and African counterparts, might just possess the deeper societal comprehension of the importance pressed upon improvement of one's position in correlation to societal dictation. On the surface, this nature this nature could be at the heart of a plethora of avenues as to why Europeans seem to have held what is seen under an uneducated microscopic lens as a slim advantage that's seen them hoisted into being the solar system star that other societies must orbit mesmerically to choreograph survival. Right, guys, so what I meant by was like, other societies seem to orbit European society in order to choreograph survival, is that it's the only place that like people will swim across oceans, live in destitute camps for year upon year just to get to this place. If you closed your eyes and it was a movie, you would say this place is paved with gold and it's El Dorado, or it's like a dreamland, right? So you've got people that like want to come to Europe from all over the world, like, yeah. So basically, they're like Pied Piper being like led here, right? That being said, like, I was speaking about money, but not really using the word money. That construct money, which is obviously a European empowerment measurement, right? That creation of money to credit each other, right, has created like a sort of a framework that maybe the rest of the world didn't have, which were just trading with each other, right? And it's allowed people that were poor, destitute, to accumulate money and come up through the ranks, when in other parts of the world it might have just been whoever was the greatest warring faction would be on top. When they have, like in Europe, they had it everywhere in the world, but don't get me wrong, but recently institutions, places of education, in this world they say it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But when you have institutions and you have businesses, you have apprenticeships, you have so many different ways that someone can come up filtered to the top. They have like a system in place where somebody can come from nothing and be on the level of a regal person, when in other societies you ain't never going to be on a level paring with royalty or the merchants or whoever's rich, but they at least give you a route. You may have to be, if you grew up on the East End of London 300 years ago, you may have to have been a ruthless toe rag or whatever to get to the top, but there was a route. When other parts of like the world, unless you're from that lineage, blue blood, marrying cousin upon cousin or whatever, you're never going to get in certain places of society. When Europe does offer you that opportunity and has offered that opportunity, and now with people of colour obviously here in Europe, you can actually be, in theory, you can be like the leader of the country, and be of any racial background. When a lot of these places they go on about that are so beautiful, you couldn't go there and be the mayor of their country. Like, they'd let you be successful, but there's only so far you can go. When here you can literally go and become anything. Don't get me wrong, like, it's still harder for certain people of certain colour and all the rest of it, but the framework is there. That if you work hard enough, you're good enough, you get the opportunity, you take it, it's there, there's a framework for it. When in other places of the world, not to say they're behind, but they haven't got that just yet, And so, can you imagine, like, someone goes into institution as a genius or whatever, right? And, these people would be thrown to the side in other places in the world. I remember like a lot of African people told me, they said, Mark, man, that left hand that you're using, yeah, in my country, yeah, that would be beaten out of you. You would no way be, you would be treated as like you're dumb, or you're not intelligent. Yeah, and you wouldn't get anywhere with that left hand, right? With that left hand. I've had certain African people tell me that, yeah. When in Europe now, you'll be able to go somewhere, go to like an apprenticeship, going back hundreds of years, and they'll eventually, yeah, uncover and polish your talent. Yeah, can you imagine like they take diamonds out of the ground in Africa and they polish them up in Europe? Can you imagine? It could be the same with people. Footballers, they'll take a footballer out of Africa, put him in the Belgian football team, and turn him into Belgian chocolate, and he's like the greatest player, Lukaku or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So there's obviously a refining process within Europe that actually nurtures and allows talent to be what it can be. When if you stay in your environment or in Africa, wherever, you just end up being another guy. But you can come here and at least fly your wings. And it's to be noticed. And that's why, like, when I see people tearing down universities now and stuff like that, my outlook's changed, right? And I see people like trying to tear down like things that have been there hundreds of years, that have like created a conveyor belt of like genius, or people to be the best. That word's floated around, but people to be the best that they can be. Do you know what I mean? These things cannot be like just interrupted at the wave of a flag or people marching up and down the street, man. They can't just like come and tear that down, man. But who knows? Anyway, that concludes this episode. Just like throwing around a few thoughts and feelings as to why Europeans sort of do what they do, because amongst black circles and darker skin circles, you know, the word white devil does get bounded around sometimes. Or like, you know, there's something wicked about this set of people, when everybody's just the same to me, man. But obviously, to me, and I'm going to say this a lot in the series, history's history, mate. What's done is done. Someone was doing, if you don't do it, someone else another society would do it for you. And it's just like, maybe because you guys were producing invention, technology, yeah. You know, you got the step on the world, but it doesn't mean in the next 200 years, it's most probably, if you have to put a bet on it, China's going to take over the whole world. I said to someone, like, I believe like there could be an alliance happening in the world. And literally, like, on the board, 15 of them would be Chinese and 5 would be from the rest of the world. That's the way it's looking in terms of supremacy from my mind's eye, from what I can see. You know, 50, 100, 200 years down the line. Yeah. But anyway, we see, could be wrong. Anyway, it is still Dilated Peoples of the Caribbean, but end of the day, you've got to look at things geopolitically sometimes, man. That's where it goes, you know. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this this first sort of foray into the Europeans in the Caribbean. Next, we're just going to maybe go into slave mastery and what they you know, the brutal economics behind it, basically. Anyway, you take care. Love, one, bless. Love to all.